It's the sound of ideas from 90.3 WCPN Idea Stream. I'm Mike McIntyre. Good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Cyber attacks are on the rise across the world. We talked on this show about trying to keep our personal information safe, about being smart when it comes to passwords and such. But think about how much of your information is on the computers of other organizations, banks, retailers, the government. It seems every week we hear about a breach that exposes sensitive information. How serious are the threats, and what's being done to protect our data? And does it make you feel reassured knowing that where there have been attempts to beef up security by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, another agency, the NSA, National Security Agency, secretly inserted a backdoor allowing federal spies to crack open that data? So how reassured do you feel? Join us with your cybersecurity concerns and questions this morning. 216-578-0903 is the phone number to call. 866-578-0903 is the toll-free number, and you can send us an email, news@wcpn.org. Interested in hearing your experiences. Perhaps you've been the victim of some cyber shenanigans. Maybe you're somebody that's figured out the secret. And what about the safety you feel with your banks or your other financial institutions, or even Amazon, which probably has your credit card information on file? How do you feel about that? Do you feel safe? So feel free to give us a call as we have our conversation now with really a roster here of experts on the topic. We start with SHERYL Harris, the ace consumer columnist from the Plain Dealer and Cleveland.com, and the knower of all things. Hello there, SHERYL. Very nice to have you with us.
That's a tough bill, Mike.
Well, we're glad to have you, and I appreciate your helping me with our questions this morning as well. And you can join the conversation and ask from a consumer side questions of SHERYL Harris at 216-578-0903. And we're also going to talk about what governments and corporations are doing about their cybersecurity. And to help us do that this morning, KELLEY is here. He's the Chief Technology Officer at Vestige. It's a computer forensics firm headquartered in Medina, and he's also the company's lead investigator there. Greg, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mike.
Very nice to have you with us. Thank you very much. Like that. Ken STASIAK is here as well. Did I pronounce that right? STASIAK? Right. And Ken is the CEO of Secure State. It's an information security consultancy in Bedford Heights. Welcome to you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Very nice to have you. And Eric Vanderburg is here too. He's the Director of Information Systems and Security at Jurinov. It's a computer forensics and cybersecurity firm housed right here in the Idea Center building at Playhouse Square. Eric, it's nice to meet you, and thanks for coming all the way downstairs.
Pleasure to be here.
Tough commute down here this morning, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
A lot of traffic in the stairwell. Very nice to have you, and I'm glad to have all three of you here as we talk about this topic. Janet Napolitano, when she was giving an exit speech from the position she had at Homeland Security, said she warned of a major attack coming to U.S. companies, major cyber attack. But it seems as though there isn't just one major event people are worried about. We have been seeing, this really has become, according to The Atlantic, the year of the hack. Tell me a little bit about that, Ken, about what we've been experiencing here and whether it's been stepped up in this 2013 year.
Yes. So we're seeing more and more attacks. I mean, that's obviously true. And as we go into 2014, we're going to see even more. And the question is why? So we know that there's state-sponsored hacking activity, criminals, organization crime units that are looking to steal the information. Is it that we're reporting more of it now and it's more aware, so people are more on social media, they're posting the fact that they're getting breached, or is it the same amount and the intensity of the hacks are increasing, so they're going after organizations with more data and exposing more records, as we saw with the Adobe breach last week.
Adobe, which is the software
That's
company.
Right.
What we're seeing with these breaches, though, are not necessarily information stolen. We're seeing information exposed, right? Is that how you see it, Ken? I mean, Greg?
Yeah, it's information making its way out there into the world, whether it's financial information or personal information, or it's companies' intellectual property that's getting out there. The new currency these days is intellectual property. And a lot of the nation-state hackers, as well as the criminal hackers, they want at that intellectual property because they can turn that around and either use it themselves or sell it on the street.
Well, there's a really brisk business, though, in consumers' private information, and I think that when a lot of the recent breaches as well, you do see consumer or employee information that's being exported and sold. And it's not just your social security number and your date of birth, which are really valuable pieces of information, because with them you can, of course, get credit, you can apply for tax refund, you can apply for government benefits, but also some of those knowledge-based information, like the security questions. If you go to a website and you forget your password, which I do constantly, and then you get these little pop-ups that ask you security questions, and
like your mother's maiden name and things like that.
Not just that, but like what was here in 1998? Did you live at which address? And then you'll have 4. Like, what was your mortgage payment in 2003? And you're thinking, I didn't give out this information. It's information that's gone from other databases, but those questions are used to authenticate who you are, so you can get your password back. And now that kind of data is being exported in some of these kind of hacks. So it's across the board what people are taking.
Is that an example of something I read about, Eric's? It's called social engineering. One of the ways to get this information is to mine it in that way, that kind of stuff. Do you know a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Social engineering is where you'll play as somebody else and trying to get information from somebody. Here I pretend to be a help desk person, or law enforcement, somebody else in authority, or the person who has a question, who's kind of confused and is in need of some help. And then you use that as a gateway to request some information, like what's your password if you're the help desk person, or how do I get onto the site if I'm the user in need of help, or authority figure, give me this information because I'm who I say I am.
And then getting that information sometimes can then be used for the purposes that SHERYL was talking about too, so that I do know the mother's maiden name, for example, because that's a common question on these types of things. So it goes down to sort of what seems to be the pretty easy stuff to the really complex hacks that we've been talking about too. What about this idea of nation-state hacking, the notion that North Korea and China and Iran are attacking financial institutions? That seems to be a much bigger deal now than it has been in the past. Ken, and I'm going to ask you to pull that mic a little closer to you when you join. There you go. What about that? What about the idea that these financial institutions are under attack from organizations that really just want to wreak havoc?
Right. I think, in the macro world, the geographic boundaries are collapsing. We see that all the time. So it's not surprising that we're seeing state-sponsored activity start to really encroach into our major financial institutions. One of the things to keep a note on is, as you see everyone releases, what's coming up in 2013, the top trends for 2012. If you go back 10 years, the same trends 10 years ago still persist today. So we're not talking about these crazy threats that organizations really have to look at. They should start looking at building a basic program, and then from there start to escalate up. But too many times we chase these hackers in China, and what do we do against that? And really it's the basic principles of security that we should be looking at holistically as consumers as well as business. And then as these emerging threats take place, we'll be in a better position.
216-578-0903 is the phone number to call to talk about cyber attacks and hacking issues. Perhaps you've had some experience with them. Perhaps you run a company and are concerned about security. Let us know what your thoughts are and what your experience is. 866-578-0903 is the toll-free number, or you can send us an email, news@wcpn.org, and we can take your comments or questions that way too. And SHERYL, what about the notion that consumers have to be very concerned about their information? One of the things that you wrote recently is if hackers do get to the information that's on someone else's database, what they should basically find is an empty wallet. That the information shouldn't be, for example, your credit card information shouldn't be on file with someone else. Tell me a little bit about some of the advice that you
Well,
might give.
okay, so there are a lot of companies out there that are keeping way more data sensitive data than they really need to have. So in other words, if you go to a website and you're going to shop there, you have the choice to either have it kind of permanently stored because you go back a lot, and so some people like to have their credit cards and things on file, or just going in as a guest. You give it one-time information, and there are a whole bunch of companies, Visa and MasterCard, that are looking at ways to make mobile payments just sort of icon-based, so nobody really has a credit card that they can go back to. But a credit card is the least of your worries, because your protected against that. And you're protected against theft, and there's some checks down the line to sort of what's the bigger deal, I think, is your Social Security number, because you're so exposed when that's out there. And we're coming up now on the holiday hiring season, so there are going to be a bunch of big companies that have job applications online, and many of those companies are going to ask people for their Social Security numbers just as part of that application. And it's crazy, because if you figure maybe there are 100 applicants for every one job, and I think there actually are quite many more than that. But if there are 100 applicants for every one job that you plan to do, in no way do you plan to do background checks on 99 people to get your one applicant. You plan to maybe winnow through those things, get down to 3 or 4, have a couple in for interviews, get down to 1, and run a background check, because you have to pay for background checks. So they're not running 99 background checks they don't need.
So they don't need 100 numbers.
They don't need them. And once you have them as a company, you are obligated to protect that information. So you shouldn't be collecting it if you can't protect it. And you shouldn't be collecting it if you don't need it, and you shouldn't be storing it if you don't plan to use it. I mean, those are just basic, I think, security things.
But I think the companies would disagree that they don't necessarily need it, because they find ways to use that information to better, pull up ads, for the user's experience when they go onto a website. I mean, the Social Security number isn't going to help a company put an ad up to show you what kind of shoes or what kind of coat you want. But some of the other information, like, for example, what's your favorite sports team, which might be a security question. They're going to want to store that kind of information and use that to customize your experience and sell to you. But I agree that if they collect that information, they really do need to protect it. And back to your other point about employment, this becoming the employment season, there are a lot of scams out there right now as far as makeshift companies or companies that don't exist attempting to collect that information from users. Again, going back to social engineering. We can, someone asked me before, why can't companies better protect their data? And my response is that twofold. One is they've got to protect the data all the time, whereas the hacker only needs to be successful once. And the weakest link in protecting that data is the human interaction. It's the social engineering. But you bring up a good point, is that when companies do hold that information, they do have an obligation to protect it in some way.
So let me ask you this.
That's a good point, though, that Sheryl brought up, and I'll let you. But if she says don't collect it unless you can protect it, are you guys confident that corporations can protect information? Should we be confident that our information is protected?
They do the best they can, but again, they have to protect it all the time, versus the hacker only needs to be successful once.
I think you brought up, the NIST and the different frameworks. Obama was coming out and saying specifically, let's meet with the CEOs and figure out how do we address cybersecurity. And they're rolling out frameworks and whatnot. In order to get organizations to stop collecting this information and really hold them accountable, there's going to have to be some type of a violation, or some type of more of a taxation, or something that corporations go through that they're going to have to conform to if they're not doing security. Because quite frankly, there's nothing to stop organizations from collecting it, and there's nothing that's going to stop them from having to protect it all the time and spend the money above and beyond what the competition is.
Well, you do see, though, the FTC fining companies, and maybe those fines aren't high enough, but they're pretty hefty fines, usually in the millions for big companies that are leaking data. And then you're also, I think, starting to see a lot of private lawsuits against companies who allow consumers or employees to be compromised. So, and maybe that's just sort of the natural evolution. When it comes down to the dollar, people pay attention. But I think, like, big companies at least have the cash, I think, to pay for security. And I think maybe some smaller companies, maybe they don't have as much data, but I think they also don't always have the security at all. I think that's a real afterthought.
In fact, the British Federation of Small Businesses issued a report revealing that 41% of small businesses in Great Britain had suffered attacks from cyber criminals during 2012 with a cost of £785 million. So that's a small business issue as well. And Eric, same question to you. Can I feel safe that my information is being protected? I know you guys are on that wall, and I know that it's a $200+ billion business that you're in. But should we have confidence that our information is safe and secure?
Well, it's a good question, kind of a difficult one. There's so many different companies out there that have this data. You mentioned the small business, and while technology makes it very easy for the small business to compete in a space, it also enables them to collect a lot of data that maybe they don't need and they might not have the ability to protect. Some will outsource that and try to use the resources of multiple different companies together, or of another provider that's the best in class. Of course, that also brings its own risks. And then the larger companies, sure, they're going to have some more resources to be able to allocate to that, and oftentimes have a more mature security framework in place. So it kind of depends on where your data is at, and most consumers are shopping from small and large companies. They're looking at price.
My data's everywhere. That's part of the problem. And we're going to take a quick break right here and pick it up at that point. A couple of other things to delve into, too. One fact, as I was looking up, there's a quarterly report that's put out on cyber attacks. Totally blew me away. I realize that there are thieves that go in and try to steal your actual money. But in the game World of Warcraft, which probably your kids know something about, there was a cyber criminal attack to steal millions of gold pieces from players' accounts, which then went to buy some other imaginary goods within the game. So even in the gaming industry, even if we reach down to the younger folks, there are issues with these cyber attacks. It gets much more serious after that, and we're going to talk about some of those serious attacks and really what are the companies that have your information doing to protect that information, and what can you do to try to make that information better secured. This is The Sound of Ideas. I'm Mike McIntyre. We're back in just a minute.
The Second City comes to Playhouse Square November 14th. The renowned sketch comedy and improv troupe that's produced such celebrated performers as Mike Myers, Bill Murray, and more. The Second City features the stars of tomorrow. More at playhousesquare.org.
Support for 90.3 comes from Mustard Seed Market and Cafe, presenting the annual Holiday Taste Fair Saturday, November 9th from noon to 4 p.m. in Solon and Montrose. Details at mustardseedmarket.com.
Montessori High School at University Circle is hosting a student open house Wednesday, November 6th at 6:30 p.m. Montessori High School encourages independent learning through a broad college preparatory course of study. Partnering with the University Circle cultural community, Montessori High School provides an engaged student learning environment and offers the International Baccalaureate Diploma. Both day and boarding options are available. Details at 216-421-3033 or montessorihighschool.org.
You're back with The Sound of Ideas. It's about 9:25 a.m. Appreciate you listening to the program. We're talking today about something that really affects all of us, and that is cybersecurity. How much of your information is out there? How much is it? Do you have a credit card account perhaps on file with Amazon as you download your books to your device? Do you have your information for banking online? All of those things are bits of information that are out and really are in control of other corporations, of other people. How are they doing protecting your information? If you have questions about that or concerns, feel free to join the conversation, 216-578-0903. We have with us SHERYL Harris. She's a consumer columnist from The Plain Dealer, and she is going to be asking questions and talking from the consumer side of things. And also with us, Greg Kelley. He's the Chief Technology Officer at Vestige. It's a computer forensics firm in Medina. Ken Stasiak is here, CEO of Secure State in Bedford Heights, and Eric Vandenberg is the Director of Information Systems and Security at Jurinov, which is right here in Playhouse Square. SHERYL, you were asking during the break a real interesting question of Greg. I'll ask you to redo that for our listeners.
Okay. Well, I wondered, Greg, if you could just tell us a story about, a hack. Just how, once it happens, you go in. How do you find out that just tell me, how did they get in? What escaped? What information escaped? And how do you sort of track that back?
Sure. We had a client of ours call because they were, what this organization did is they managed financial accounts for other small companies. And they contacted us because about $100,000 had been taken from some of the financial accounts. And so we did our analysis and our investigation, and what we found out was one of the individuals at the financial services firm was at lunch break, just looking to do wedding planning, just going to wedding planning websites. And on one of those sites, it's what we call a drive-by hack. You're not going to any kind of bad website or anything like that, but it's just there is a compromised ad or something else on the web page, and before they knew it, they had a keylogger installed on the computer. And what a keylogger is it's logging your keystrokes. It's recording your keystrokes. So it's recording usernames, passwords, account information. And not only that, but this keylogger was specific in that it only wanted information from banking websites.
So these bots were able to detect if you were on a banking site or a financial site.
Based on the keywords of what it was looking for in the website address. It was looking for specific banking type sites and other kind of specific identifiers. And it kept its keylogging information just to those specific areas.
So what happened?
So what happened is that once she got the keylogger on the computer, logged into some of the bank accounts, and the bad guys, for lack of a better word, received the keylog information, and they logged in themselves and started withdrawing money. Eventually it was stopped. Some of the money was recovered, but the rest of the money, insurance companies had to pay out.
Was anyone ever arrested or
Nine times out of 10 you don't find who these people are. Quite often they may be overseas. Most of the time you don't find out who these people are.
Let's bring Jim in Shaker Heights into the conversation. Jim, you're on with our experts. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much. I've all of a sudden I'm getting a blast of like 30 emails a day from companies that I've never even asked for information from. I don't know how these people email share. Like, I went to unsubscribe, and I found the name Amazon in there for some company that sells mortgages or whatever. Are they allowed? How do they email share like this? Ever since I purchased something from Amazon, and ever since I've refinanced my house, my condo, now all of a sudden I'm getting lower your mortgage or TransUnion, and I keep hitting unsubscribe, giving them my email, and I still keep getting them because they come through another provider. So it's just like constant 30, 40 emails a day that I keep going through and hitting unsubscribe.
I can hear the frustration in your voice.
He's lucky it's only 40.
Yeah. How does that happen? Eric, can you give some advice to our caller, Jim?
Well, any place where your email address may have been put in could be the source if that company or that website was compromised. And once your email address is out there, it's going to just be sold over and over and over. And the kind of second part of this is you're getting all these emails, and some of them, or actually probably most of them, are not really from those companies. They're phishing messages. They're messages that are intended for you to click on links and to put in account information.
They're not doing that just to mess with me, though. They want to get that info.
They want to get that.
When I click that link, and by the way, I delete them. I hope you do too, Jim. You're just deleting. You never click on a link on something you don't know. But when I do click on that link, if I do, does the fact that I clicked on it expose me, or do I then have to go further and fill out whatever form there is on the ensuing page?
Well, I wouldn't click on the link and fill out that form. Depending on which email service you're using, just flag it as spam and don't click on anything, because clicking on it can register you with them and tell them that this is an active
and it
IP
can
address,
download
email address,
you can get malware from clicking on the link.
You can, yes.
You don't have to be led to the spoof form. That's like a different thing.
And anything can have it embedded
it's
in
all
it,
bad. So, and you can, if you feel like it's coming from a company, you can forward those to UCE@ftc.gov, and that's kind of like they go after people who spam people a lot. You can set your spam filter up higher, and what is also a really good idea is for you to put your email on make sure it's on a view mode so that you're not actually like opening those emails when you're looking at them. You can kind of just eyeball them first and decide if you want to click them as spam or delete them, but so you're not really like opening every single email, because that can download bad stuff.
One of the other things you can look to do is email accounts are free. You can get a free account from Gmail, free account from Yahoo. Have one account for your personal things or for Facebook and stuff like that. Then have another account that just solely does purchases on the internet. and you can have another one that does banking, and you separate it. And then you can understand what messages you should be getting to each one. And furthermore, if you are compromised in one area, you're less likely to be compromised in the others.
And you would have different passwords for each of those, right?
They sell applications that you can store that. Come on.
Right. Dash lane, etc.
Right.
And it seems, too, that sometimes those emails come from people who are familiar to you. There's a couple of accounts. I have one of those separate accounts that was just for when I was coaching basketball, and it was where I sent all the messages out and got the messages back from the parents. And I recently got something from one of the parents, and I haven't coached that team for a couple